Hey, David here. We are live for another special tour of my library. So I had finished my library. So anyone who's been following my stream for a few months, like 20 installments, I did a weekly Wednesday tour of my library, and then I went on after that to do a philosophy of science stream, and now I'm going solo with the week in review on my channel. But I just got a whole bunch of chess books in. So, and also anyone who follows me on eBay, I'll share my eBay store. Um, I finally finished my father's construction on his new library. Finally finished. So, it took a long time. And so now my father's library is finished and I'm organizing the books. And my dad's going to be dumping and getting through quite a few books. Okay, Michael here. So God bless. Thanks for tuning in. Michael had helped me with my father's library and chess books. So I went through my dad's chess books, and my dad has this awesome chess book collection. And my dad he had made expert, and he stopped playing really when I was in high school already, like middle school. So my dad hasn't played tournament chess in over 25 years, but he really likes chess books. So he's been collecting them his whole life. And I organized my father's chess books. My father has like 6 shelves, big shelves of chess books, probably like 3,000 chess books. So these were all duplicates. These were all ones that my father had 2 copies of. And for organizing for him, my father gave me the duplicates. And so I don't really play competitive chess anymore. I never plan on playing competitive chess anymore. I had been during COVID-19. I got into the variants and like Crazy House and Horde and Racing King. And then after COVID-19, I gave that up. I took myself off of Lee chess. And, time is just too limited for chess, even for variants. Although I like chess coaching. And as I was saying on Week in Review, I plan to give most of these books away. I might put some of them up for sale because some of these books are valuable, and I'm not sure if they're going to be worth anything for me to give away because most of my students are relatively beginner, and a lot of these books are older and maybe of no use to beginning students. Although many of them will be, so at least half of these books I'll give away, and maybe the other half I'll put up for sale. And so if people follow me on eBay, and we can negotiate prices. Although anyone follows me local in Metro Detroit, come on down to the Detroit City Chess Club, and we could talk about your chess study. And Duvid, as a volunteer chess coach, could recommend maybe some of these books will help you in your chess improvement. So before I get to the books, I'll talk a little bit more about the study of chess and chess books because I want to return to talking about the science of expertise. And there's a lot of studies on chess and chess improvement. And I enjoy chess coaching, like successful at it. I've been doing it for over a decade of volunteer activity. And I have a lot of thoughts on cognitive development, expertise, intelligence in general, intelligence over a lifetime, memory, memory techniques. And many of these things, my best knowledge of it comes from chess. So I'm going to jump right in, start with some of the books. And I'll mention that try to go over some of the books in the nature. So chess is relatively a simple game. Like, I teach chess. I have my last essay. I'll share my last essay on chess. And, chess is a pedagogical tool and teaching. And I want to write more essays on chess. And you have to put my thoughts together in a wise way. But the chess, largely to improve, is through the study in books and what they call um, active mental practice. And I've talked a little bit about the science of expertise, and a lot of these studies were for like Gobet and Andres Eriksson in Sweden, and some of the studies I read related to the multiple truth hypothesis, or various programs I did on chess on my channel. So let me share these also. This playlists on. So let me do a screen share real quick before I get into this. Sorry for the slow time here, but we're going to get to the books very quickly. So just on my channel playlists. So here's my rambles of a chess coach. So the Detroit City Chess Club is open now on Fridays. However, we're in like the small room, and it hasn't really been public play. Although if you're in Metro Detroit, even if you're not a Detroiter, you're a Detroit public school student, you're welcome to come down, and or you could contact me in advance if you plan on coming down. And so I haven't been filming chess rambles because we're in a small room and it hasn't really been open to the public. So if people remember, in the summer we had Maurice Ashley, and so Harper Jackson, one of the Cas Tech students, one of our regular. I think he just won an award with the Detroit City Chess Club. Great student, good player, one of the top players on the Cas Tech team. Regular student leader of the Detroit City Chess Club. So then we had Maurice Ashley came in and spoke. So that was my last video this summer. But I had done a series of streams on expert performance. So I did expert performance. What does the science say? And I reviewed a long essay on chess performance by Roy Roaring, a PhD thesis, where he covered some of the theories of expertise in chess. And I did another stream on, just put these in the chat, and I'm going to get to the books right after this. And I did another stream on chess expertise and intelligence, scientific evidence, and show that there's not necessarily a correlation between chess and intelligence, and some level it could be an inverse, or the level of practice, attention, done related to AI, decision making, education. I had Joanna Tries on as a guest. I had Zaraza from Russia on as a guest, and Igor from Israel, and Crazy 8, the Bug House player from Israel. So I had those on my channel. People could check those out. So just mentioning the role of expertise and why you have to study chess from books really to improve at the game. And, like the level of expertise to be a strong player, of the levels of expertise. And I'm not going to get too much into that because I already streamed hours about that. I'm going to get back to that in the near future. But, suffice it to say that there's a huge literature. Chess, although is a relatively simple game with just 6 pieces and simple geometric patterns, it is near infinite in the amount that could go into the game. And you have Sheridan Week in Review, like, within a few moves. Usually you're in a new position within like 5 moves. Most games are already in a position that's never been seen before. There are themes and tactics. So I divided the books up today. Basically, tactics, endgames, the opening, great players, and tournaments and strategy books. So tactics are the most common understanding, like Puzzle Rush now on chess.com and Lee Chess, where you just do chess problems. And so, like a typical book like this, and I'll show you multiple books like this. And it just has a bunch of problems. And the problems are usually simple, like you'll make a few moves to win. And to sharpen your game, most games are positional and strategic. Although, however, Arnie Shalom, I'm not sure if you're a chess player. However, there'll be a few points in the game, especially weaker players, where you have the opportunity to get a decisive win. So sometimes it could be like a mating pattern, like, mate in 2, mate in 3, mate in 4, like in the old classic, the person would announce mate in 5 and be a forced combination or sequence. But most of the time it's just a way to win material. So like a very weak play, it's just like, okay, the person hung a piece and you take the piece. At little level, it could be a 2 move or a 3 move, like the piece is attacked more times than it's defended. And be called tactics as opposed to strategy. Tactics is when there is a decisive way to either win the game or get advantage on the board and to see it. So many books just have problems. So here is a huge book of Never-Ending Tactics, 3003 Positions to Perfection by Ludmil Svetkov. And you see just over 3,000 positions of simple tactics to more complicated tactics, like the stuff you would see on Puzzle Rush. And this one is not even divided into themes. So most of the tactic books are divided into theme, you'll see. So my dad actually has almost the complete collection of Svetkov's books. He's got like on players, like for buffs, like the top players, grandmasters, world champions, and like for buffs, and the little pamphlets of an overview of some of the best games of the players. So this is a huge author. This author's authored like 100 chess books, and my dad is like like over 50 books from this author. And so these are mostly collected from those books, and these are decisive tactical positions from Grandmaster games. So huge book, over 3,000 positions. Here also is Laszlo Polgar, Judith Polgar, Susan Polgar's father. One book, 5,334 problems, combinations, and games. And you just has thousands and thousands of problems. And then, at the end, the solution, many of them are just one move solutions, some of them multiple moves. So I think I saw on the Chess Dojo with Grandmaster the YouTube, the Twitch channel, YouTube Chess Dojo with Jesse Cry and 2 other IMs, and they said this is one of the best chess tactic books, comprehensive. And this one is divided into just this one actually has a table of contents with mate in 2, white to move, black to move, some from games, some compositions, mate in 3s, and miniature games. So just mate in 1, mate in 2, mate in 3s. So not much division. So here's another one. He also has an endgame book. So Tactics by Bajaranis. This is Ulvi and Ilgar Bajrani, who are Azerbaijani grandmasters. So I'm not too familiar, but I guess they're famous Azerbaijani grandmasters. And this is divided by topic. So this one has um, the type of the various types of tactics that exist, like deflection, overloading, decoy, clearance, discover attack, pinning, skewer, x-ray, double attack, annihilation of defense, uh, interference, obstruction, trapping of pieces, intermediate, and mixed tactical motifs. So in the longest section is mixed that will have multiple ones. So most tactic books and like the training ones, I'll get also to the ones that start explaining them, have them divided into sections. So tactics have, called motifs of similarities between them. So when you're training as a youth, and I'll get into some of the books, these ones basically just have puzzles. So, these are well-known, books that are just collections of puzzles. Here's also Chess Informant, the old chess publisher, and my dad has like like a large part of the collection of Chess Informant, and they used to be one of the biggest publishers going way back, and I have to look into the history of publication, and they would have these books that would be in multiple languages, like Russian, English, German, Spanish, French, and here it's based on pawn, knight, bishop, rook, and queen. And so just a collection of problems and solutions. And, so Chess Informant, and, an important publisher in the history of chess. I'm not even sure if they're still around anymore. Okay, so here, Dave Couture, who is not a particularly strong player, like not even as strong as Duvid, but put together a book, Progressive Tactics, 1,002 progressively challenging chess tactics that just problems that get progressively harder. And you see this player was about 1,800. And so just a collection of problems. So these are very common type books, and I'll probably give these books away to, quite a few of these books. I'll give these books away to high school, even junior high school students. Some of these books are applicable to young people, even elementary school kids. When I was a kid, I'll show as we move on. Like when I was a kid, I read some of these books. Some of these books I remember reading when I was a young kid, like even in elementary school. And I mentioned I had looked at Think Like a Grandmaster when I was in elementary school, that my dad had picked out and showed me. Like I'd messed up in a game and I'd had an advantage and then blew it and went on to lose. And my dad pulled out his copy of Think Like a Grandmaster, and he had underlined the section where it talked about getting overconfident and in the losing concentration and not winning one games. And so I'd even read Think Like a Grandmaster, and I included that in one of the 13 books that changed my life. However, these were the more common books that I read as a youth. And, so even in elementary school, you could read these books because all you need is notation. It's just problems and answers. So here, Yakov Geller, 1,500 forced mates, a Russian grandmaster, and this has the common dividing, pawn promotion, vacation. He even maybe creates a few, windmill, X-ray, discover check. So he even has a little bit more than other ones, and a little bit more explanation, but not much. So this almost just completely chess puzzles. A very little at the beginning of the chapter that will have an explanation, like the windmill attack or something like that. So like all chess players probably know the famous windmill attack. And so just a small explanation of what it is, and then a bunch of puzzles. So similar to, like Lex Friedman says, the best books are textbooks. You think like what you gained the most knowledge from, a lot of it was textbooks when you were a youth in school. And because you learned the idea, you saw worked examples, and then did the practice problems at the end of the chapter. So most chess books are designed in the same way, where they explain the idea, they give an example of the idea. A lot of them you'll see later, they give details for how it arises in regular play, and how these ideas might come up in regular play, and then they give a whole bunch of examples. So that's really the great thing of chess books, because they're trained really to master it. Like give you the pattern, a few worked examples of the pattern. A lot of them will show from games how the pattern might arise in regular play, and then a whole bunch of examples. Here, Lev Shaskis is an Israeli grandmaster. So this book, Russian-Israeli Grandmaster Advanced Chess Tactics, and this one is a little bit different than the other ones because it's based on opening and pawn structure. So the Israeli Grandmaster Lev Shakis, and so you see, here he has against the Benoni hanging pawns, isolated queen pawn, um, in different parts of the isolated queen pawn, the Sicilian pawn structure, the Caro-Kann, and non-standard openings. And so this is more, less puzzles, and it shows advanced chess tactics based on pawn structures. So, this one would be a little bit more advanced. It's by an Israeli grandmaster and goes through pawn structures, opening structures, the type of attacks and tactics, and more how they would arise from regular play, and has a lot of games. And it's one of these new quality chess books uh, that has a lot of pictures and diagrams, and good font. So you could probably read this without setting up a board. Although you mentioned a lot of these books are designed to set up a board that nowadays like computers, but the old school, you'll actually set up a chessboard and set up the position and go through games, which you could do because there's a lot of games in this. However, this also has enough diagrams where there's a diagram like every 5-10 moves that you wouldn't need to set up a board. So I haven't looked at this one yet, but Israeli Grandmaster, this is probably a good book. So we'll see. This probably maybe from like 1500 to even master level play. This probably would even be beneficial up to master level play, and because it's based on opening and pawn structures. So these are classics. My dad has like the whole Fred Reinfeld collection. Fred Reinfeld was very famous chess author, and he was like one of the first one to do these books of puzzles. And he like 1001, 1001. So there's like a whole series of Fred Reinfeld 1001, and I just have the checkmate one. And these are somewhat simple, like queen sacrifices, checkmate without the queen, storming a castle position, harrying the king, discover check and double check, pawn promotion, and variety of motifs. So this book, the Fred Reinfelds, were some of the very first chess books I ever read. When I was in elementary school, I already went through the Fred Reinfeld books. So these ones I'll likely give away to young children, elementary, middle school. That these are pretty simple, and you could maybe get up to like 1500. These books are useful up to from like 800 to 1500 strength in chess. So here's another one, Chris Ward, It's Your Move. And these are somewhat tests. Actually, I'm going to put this as more positional. So that's not really tactics, it's positional. So it's set up in the same way, but it's not directly tactics. So Yakov Neistat, um, Jewish Russian, and very popular, very famous attacking grandmaster, many strong books about attacking play. And this has more explanation and examples, worked examples with um, different motifs, attacking the exposed king, insufficient defense in the first rank, like a back row, defects in the pawn cover, a weakness of squares of a certain color when the queen is short of space, the pin, careful in the long diagonal, heading for promotion, um, stalemate. So different things. Yakov Neistat, you'll see I have quite a few books from him, uh, well-regarded, renowned author. And, this also could probably be read by like even a junior high student, maybe even get a person up to 1500. Some of these are more advanced than like the Fred Reinfeld, but you might even get a person up to like 1800, from like 1000 to 1800. Okay, so for people who know chess, this used to be one of the most famous chess authors there is. Bruce Pandolfini, he was famous for being the teacher of Josh Waitzkin in Searching for Bobby Fischer. He was one of the advisories, I think, on Queen's Gambit. He was a weak master himself, not a particularly strong player. He was a national master, but he wrote a lot of books, and he was very big in chess promotion. When I was a youth, like the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000, Bruce Pandolfini was one of the biggest names in chess. And as I said, he's in Searching for Bobby Fischer, which was one of the first major chess movies in the 90s. And so here's Power Mates, essential checkmate strategies and techniques. And many of these have whole games. So this will go over the whole game and a little bit of what leads into the attacking position. So there's one thing like puzzles where that there's something there and it's just like, can you find it, versus trying to understand how to create tactics and attacking things. So these are simple books, older books. Pandolfini hasn't been around for years. I'm not even, I think he's still alive. I think he had something to do with Queen's Gambit, but was one of the big chess authors decades ago. Here's another one. Chess exercises for all players and all levels. And these are also actual positions from plays on your basic strategies of your mating attacks, forks, pins, overloads, skewers, discoveries, removing the guard, simplification, promotion. So these, even junior high school students, like I was reading Pandolfini when I was in junior high school. These are relatively simple books, could maybe get you up to like 1800 strength. This is one of the classic greatest chess books ever written. Very well organized. This is an older book. It's written in the descriptive notation. So you see like the pawn to queen, your bishop, the old school notation. This book was written in the 50s. I think translated from Russian, and this is one of the most famous chess books. Excellent book, and it goes over various checkmating patterns, and called the legals, double checks, mother's mate, the Geridian mate, Greco's, corridor, Anastasia, Bowden's, Blackburn's, and Morphy, a whole bunch of different names. They're not necessarily called by these names anymore, but your various styles of checkmates, and this also, like, it explains, it has quizzes, it explains the basic structure of the mate, it has games showing how the checkmate could arise in regular play, and then it has puzzles. So this is really a great book, one of the classics. You somewhat basic, probably get a person to like 15, 1800 strength. Um, like but you could read the book at, like, I mean, besides the oldest written in the 50s and the descriptive notation, this is almost like must required reading, and there's not really a good book of this. Book's from the 50s, and it's still one of the best books on the subject. And here also, Irving Chernov. I was on the Perpetual Chess podcast. They were interviewing this older man who's like almost 90 years old, who knew Bobby Fischer. Irving Chernov used to be one of the top chess players, top chess authors. And so this is more opening traps. So I'll actually put this with openings because it looks like that book is mostly traps out of the opening. Okay, so next, I'm going to look at Endgames. So a lot of times weaker players, like as I wrote in my essay on coaching chess, like a lot of times I'll start with the endgame, mating with a king and queen, and the basic concepts. And endgames are extremely important. Endgames come up most games. Most games don't end up having a checkmate and end up in an endgame position. And there's various types of endgames. And generally, like a chess master, 2200 will have mastered the majority of the end games. Like, like a grandmaster, generally knows all the major end games, like all the possible variations and the small intricacies. And there's a lot of various styles of end games. Just talk like mating with a king and queen, mating with a king and rook, two bishops, a knight and bishop. And then there's the rook end games, rook and pawn, which ones are winning, which ones are drawn. Ideas where there's just a few pieces on the board. And a vast majority of games end up in the end game. And so you could see rapid improvements. So generally, the two places where newer players improve the most is studying tactics and end games. And so just look at some endgame books here, and so in chess, these are like some of the biggest names in chess. Dvoretsky and Yusupov were two of the leaders of the Russian chess school of the last few decades. And they have a lot of books translated from Russian. They were the trainers of the Russian team, and their general method of chess training was known to be basically the best method. And these days, almost all top players study Dvoretsky and Yusupov. Like maybe in the last few years, there's newer training methods out there, but for like decades, and in like chess history, you have like the Russian school. I think it was Petrosian, Russian grandmasters, who set up the first chess training schools where they recruited children from young ages and trained them, to be elite chess players. And they were rigorous in their training. They trained the players in all aspects of the game, comprehensive to know all aspects, and your training methods and so you'll see I have quite a few books from Dvoretsky and Yusupov. They're some of the most well-renowned authors. So here you have is their endgame manual, and so their endgame manual is divided to pawn endgames, where just king and pawns, to knight versus pawns, knight endgames, bishop versus pawn, opposite color bishops, bishops of the same color, bishop versus knight, rook versus pawns, rook endgames, rook versus knight, rook versus bishop, queen endgames, queen versus rook, other material relations. So this is relatively comprehensive, and this would be for like master play. So this is advanced. You probably have to be like at least 1500 for this even to be useful, and it could be used for up to master play, and even maybe possibly higher level master play. And it's somewhat comprehensive, going over all the major endgame varieties and the basic ideas and what to go about. So, Dvoretsky's endgame manual, more advanced for people, over 1500, even stronger, like 1800 to master range. So one of the most prolific chess authors of decades ago is John Nunn. So John Nunn wrote like tens of chess books on all various aspects. And he was famous grandmaster, English grandmaster, and some of it's dated. Like I think a lot of these books may have even been like the 70s and the 80s. And so a lot of it's been dated. Gambit has reprinted him, and Nunn's endgame were like definitive, and you really could get you up to master level. So this one also, Chess Endgames Volume 1, John Nunn, the definitive work on practical endgame tactics. So you got pawn endgames, knight endgames, same color bishop, opposite color bishop, and bishop versus knight endgames, and queen endgames. And you'll like the Dvoretsky. Most of these are designed, you should set up a set. Set up the position on a set and work through these. And this would be relatively time consuming. I actually see my dad had this highlighted. So this was something my dad had looked through and had highlighted, for parts of it. And he probably, God forbid, read it in the bathroom. So I didn't realize my dad had this highlighted, at least the first 40 pages. But this is comprehensive and something to go through. And for like master play, you really have to know all of these endgames well, because over a period of time, like the one in Nunn's endgame, you'll see the vast majority, probably like 75% of these endgames will come up. If it's the various type of pawn endgames or the various endgames. And then ending volume 2 is rook endgames, rook endings, and rook and minor pieces. It's a comprehensive. This would take a few months to get through. And so if you really wanted to master chess, even like from 1500 to master level, it would pay to go through these books slowly and carefully and master all of the concepts. And then also, Nunn's famous book, Secret of Pawnless Endgames. And so, this covering, just a handful of things that don't come up that often. Rook versus knight, rook versus bishop, queen versus rook, queen and knight versus queen, queen and bishop versus queen, rook and knight versus rook, rook and bishop versus rook, rook and queen, rook versus rook and bishop versus queen, queen versus rook and knight, queen versus bishop and knight, queen versus two bishops, queen versus two knights. So these are the type things that come up rarely, and the type thing like if it's a draw or a win, do you know how to do it? And so, maybe even like 1500, like master play, even high level master play, to have worked through and known these things. And there'd be certain benefit to the game, to understanding how the piece works, that would be beneficial to all levels of play. So here, like John Nunn has all sorts of books. His most famous books are on the Endgame, and John Nunn wrote, tactics books, positional books, opening books. But his most famous books are probably on the Endgame, and even this one, Secret of Pawnless Endgames, might be his most famous one. And here is John Nunn, the Endgame exercise book, 444 endgame positions to entertain and instruct. So this one more has your variety: pawn, knight, bishop, bishop versus knight, rook endings, rook and minor piece, queen, queen and minor piece, endgame, and you just problems and solutions, explanations. So, John Nunn on the endgame, even decades later, still some of the best endgame books out there. I gave this book away last week to the coach of Martin Luther King High School in Detroit, and this is a more recent version. Carson Muller and Yakov Konostel, of the Russian, German, more recent authors, and this is very similar to John Nunn, comprehensive rook endgames, and rook versus pawn and rook and two pawns versus rook and pawn versus rook and pawn, rook and two pawns versus rook and pawn, and comprehensive. You're saying this book would take months to go through, set up the board, go through, work it out, think it through, and I was relatively good at endgames, and like when I was younger, I went through some of these books, and yeah, I was reasonably good at rook endgames, and but there were, like players a lot better. Just even getting to like A player, 1800, 2000 strength, to go through and really understand your rook endgames, because like relatively, rook endgames are the most common of all endgames. That most likely endgames end up as rook and pawn endgames. I mean, sometimes like rook and a minor piece, and they're important to know. And to get up to like 2000 strength, you really have to master your rook endgames, because you're going to see them all the time, even like 1500 level. And sometimes like master play, you could get into a drawn or slightly worse position and outmaneuver the person in the rook endgame. So they're extremely important. Like a comprehensive end game. But I would say one of the things that you should study after a period, like maybe already like 1200, 1500, by like 1500, you should study rook end games. And like by the time you've reached like 1500, you've probably already read like 10 chess books. In order to reach like 2000, you probably have to read like 50 chess books, and to become a master, you probably have to read like 200 chess books. And so by the time you've become a master, you've probably read a few books on rook end games, rook and pawn end games. But even just to reach like 1500, you've probably studied a significant amount of rook end games. And it said like 1 out of 4 or 5 games ends up in a rook and pawn end game. So extremely important to know. There's a lot of books that cover it. So here are the same authors, Carson Muller and Frank Lamprecht. The other one was a different, but Carson Muller, Gambit Press, and this is a fundamental chess endings, and so this one starts with the basic mates: king and queen, king and rook, king and two bishops, knight and bishop, king and two knights versus king and pawn, and then pawn end games, knight end games, bishop end games, bishop versus knight, rook end games, rook versus minor piece, rook and minor piece versus rook, queen end games, and more, and then basic strategy. And so it's pretty comprehensive. And it's hard to say whether you should start with like the rook endgames. Rook endgames occur much more often than other endgames, but yeah, there's a lot of various styles of these, but these are almost like required reading. And at some point, if you want to reach high level play like expert, even like 1500 level, you have to know your basic endgames because like half your games are going to end up in endgames, and you need to know the theory. You need to know how to you know create a pass pawn, uh, queen a pawn, just the basic strategy to uh, coordinate your pieces to attack breakthroughs, or just the various ideas that are necessary to win a one endgame. So this is almost like required reading for um, you know chess mastery or even high level chess. Here's another one. This is new in chess. Jesus de la Villa, who is an IM from Spain. And so here's 100 endgames you must know. Uh, Vital lessons for the everyday game player. And it's divided into 100 basic endgames that it's trying to teach you your basic um, your rules like key square, opposition, starting with the very basics to knight versus pawn, queen versus pawn, rook versus pawn. Some of this is more basic, stuff where like winning with a significant advantage. Rook versus two pawns, same color bishop, bishop versus knight. So like a lot of these things are relatively basic, but you need to know how to win these games. And so this is a good book. Like anyone wanting to, this one's a little bit more basic than the other ones, but so anyone wanting to get from to like 1800 strength, even like expert strength, you really it's like the title says, 100 endgames you must know. These are just basic stuff that come up relatively frequently. So if you play regular tournaments, speed chess, you'll probably see over half of these endgames, maybe even all of them. And so generally for chess, for higher level play, you're going to study for a lot more things than are actually going to appear. So for endgames like that, you have to know many more endgames that are actually going to come up. So then just mastering them and the ideas and the technique. So this one I might even bring to give away relatively quickly. This one, um, for someone who wants to study comprehensively, one of the other books like the John Nunn or Karsten Muller, this one might be a little uh, simpler. So here, Daniel Naroditsky, one of the top U.S. players, top speed player, bullet player, one of the top in the world at like 1 minute and 30-second chess, top grandmaster, but excels most at very quick play. And he's got a series of books, Mastering Complex Endgames, prefaced by Yasser Seirawan, Practical Lessons, Critical Ideas, and Plans. And it also, the basic rook endgames, rook and minor piece, queen, queen minor piece. And this one has a lot of explanation, a lot of your more basic stuff. This one, you'll probably like 1200 to 1800 level strength. Mastering Complex S Endgames by Mikuliskin and Stetsko. And I'm not familiar with these players. These are Soviet players from the 90s. So let's see. So this one has more conceptual ideas like structural concessions, isolated pawn, queens on the board, multi-piece endgame, two-piece endgames, and more explanation. So this one might also be like 12 to 1500 strength, 12 to like 1800, 2000 strength. Sharevsky, endgame strategy, using classical games from famous play And so these are kind of ideas like chapters, centralizing the king, the role of pawns in the endgame, problem of the exchanging, do not hurry, schematic thinking, two weaknesses, the initiative, suppressing the opponent's counterplay, positions with isolated pawn. So these are generic lessons. For chess coaches looking for a lesson plan, you could probably draw lesson plans from a book like this. Magnus Carlsen, possibly um, possibly the most famous endgame player ever. Magnus Carlsen excels in the endgame. Maybe the best endgame player ever to play the game. So this by Hungarian international master Tibor Korley, and it is an examination of why Magnus Carlsen is so good at the endgame. And you're going over his game and an explanation of some of Magnus Carlsen's incredible strategy. So here I had the other book by the Bajrani's, the Azerbaijani grandmasters. And so here is endgame exercises, like the tactics exercises, and just puzzles and problems of relatively some tactics, but just like when should you trade the queens, positional decisions, to important decision making times, and then more. This one will have basically just the answer. So just puzzle book. There also have a lot of chess endgame puzzles, and here's another version of the Chevretsky strategy. So Chevretsky strategy, I have two copies of this. And then here another Irving Chernov. It said, like 50, 60 years ago, Chernov was one of the most prolific chess authors. And actually, this one's already like 1978. Casablanca, before Magnus Carlsen, one of the most famous chess endgame players of the time. So here's a collection of Casablanca's chess endgames. It has 60 games where the emphasis is mostly on the endgame. Although there is some strategy relating to like opening, because you mentioned in opening structures are many times determinative. The opening is determinative of the pawn structure, and the pawn structure is often determinative of the type endgame. So to see whole games with the focus on the endgame of former world champion Casablanca. So they have the endgames there. Okay, so let's look at biographies. I have a lot on the opening. So these are some of the most popular type chess books there are. And I'll do the I'll probably do the whatchamacallit, the opening ones last. Okay, Orfeo Thanks for tuning in. Some of these books are valuable. I might end up selling some of these books just because I'm not sure if they'll be worth anything to people. And these are actually duplicates. So these are books my dad has 2 copies of. So his library has copies of these ones. So these are really great, cool books. This is a Scottish printing company called McFarland, and they have a lot of chess biographies with like the games of famous players. So like Lewis Paulson was one of the top players in the mid to late 1800s, and he wasn't a world champion, but he played in England and Germany, mostly Germany, with many of the top players of his day. So this has 719 annotated games with a biography. And these are actually like exceptional books. These are relatively valuable, maybe even worth like $50. So I may end up selling these. And as I said, my dad has another copy that he's holding on to. So I may end up giving these away if there's someone applicable. I'm not sure if these are the type books. You'd have to really like chess or like chess history to, it's even got some pictures. It's got tournament scores. So if you really like chess history and you wanted to go through the great players from history and know their biography and the tournaments and what the chess scene was like. So these are probably like master level books, although like they're not necessarily extremely complicated analysis. Most of these books were written before the computer. So Lewis Paulson, here's another one. Kurt Richter, I think was also German chess biography with 499 games. And Kurt Richter was in the early 1900s through after World War II. So, Richter played from like 1920 through 1960, and he was a top player in the world, but played some of the world champions and mostly Germany. And so I think Richter played for the Nazis. So this is an interesting history book also, because Kurt Richter was a Nazi and was one of the leaders of the Nazi chess team. So you can see like the German championship, 1937. See pictures of the German chess team, in World War I and World War II. So Kurt Richter was your top German player through World War I and World War II, and represented Germany throughout the war years even. And so you could look at the tournaments that happened during the war years. And Richter wasn't even necessarily the strongest German player. So obviously Alexander Alekhine, who was the most famous of the players, and there you could see the chess players dressed in their Nazi uniforms. And so this is an interesting book. People who like World War II history, and Richter wasn't convicted of any war crimes or anything like that, and then continued to play chess through about 1960. So very interesting book. A lot of pictures and tournaments, especially people who are interested in World War II. So speaking of the Nazis, here McFarland, the same one, in 2 volumes, Alexander Alekhine chess games, 2,543 chess games of the world champion, annotated index, diagrams, history. So almost 1,000 pages of Alexander Alekhine. He was from Russia, but played for France and then Germany, and was a leading Nazi. Played for Germany during World War II. Was world champion, best player in the world for many years. Even wrote anti-Semitic literature. Although one of his wives was Jewish. Uh, Interesting character. And so here, 2 volumes. McFarland. This is a later printing, uh, paperback of the chess career of Alexander Alekhine, one of the most famous players ever. The Alekhines Open, E4, Knight F6, and so very interesting. Chess biography. I'm not sure, like, I mean, because these are duplicates. My dad has another copy of this in his collection. These are somewhat valuable. I'm not sure if I'll give these away. I'm not really sure if there'd be someone who, like, what type of person would really go through this. Like maybe like an expert master. You'd have to be a strong player to really care to go through all these games, or like a chess historian that really wanted to know about history, and even without going through the games, just to know about the history. So I might actually read through some of the history. The World War II stuff is pretty interesting. So that's interesting. Um, Here, another one. Newman, Hirschfeld, and Sule, Berlin Chess in the 19th Century, Biographies with 711 game. So most people probably never heard of any of these names. These were some of the top players. Like Paulson, I had the book on Paulson, who was probably better than these names, Newman, Hirschfeld, and Sule. But they would have been top 25 players in the world playing in Germany in 1850 to 1880. So covering about 30 years in Germany of the top players from like 1850 to 1880. And here's some more McFarland books. So here is Tal Petrosian, Spassky, and Korchnoi, a chess multi-biography with 270 games. And this one is Andrew Soltis. So Andrew Soltis was one of the most famous chess authors, like a national master, um, not like a highly competitive for title player, but a master, and knew a lot about chess, promoted chess, and wrote a lot of chess books. So this is the main names of the Russian school, including some grandmasters with some of their major games, but more biographical. So like chess style biography with chess games, and so 200 games in about 350 pages. And here on Botvinnik, the life and games of the world chess champion. So some of these were world champions too, like Spassky, Tell. So Botvinnik, another Andrew Soltis for McFarland, the life and games of a world chess champion. So Botvinnik, he may have been, or Petrosian, the creator of the Russian chess school that was eventually headed up by Dvoretsky and Yupasov. So from the years of like 1930 to 1960, some of the big names where Russia dominated chess. So Botvinnik. And here's another Andrew Soltis, McFarland book, Soviet chess. So, it's like Jesse Kreis sometimes says, like, chess was that Russian game, because the Russians dominated chess so much, really till the mid 2000s, till like Anand Vishwanathan Anand beat Kasparov. Last Australian, your Australian grandfather won the Miles Championship at the Melbourne Cricket Club, being the Nazi world champion. That well, 1930. So, I mean, something's wrong there in your statement, but because the Nazis didn't come into power till like 1933. So, but yeah, props if your grandfather was a chess master. So, thanks for tuning in. Um, yeah, so Soviet chess, Andrew Soltis, 1917 to 1991. So, the Soviets dominated chess for really almost 80 years. I mean, even like Alexander Alekhine, who was the champion for the Nazis, was actually Russian born. And, but, after World War II, from like 1950 to the mid 2000s, over 50 years, Russians dominated chess. And even before the world champions had almost been exclusively Russian. You had the period of Fischer, but leading through Spassky from like Botvinnik, Tell, uh, Petrosian, Korchnoi, Smyslov, the top chess players in the world from like the 1950s through 2000, besides for the very brief time when Fischer had won the championship, and that was only once that he won, and he didn't defend it. The Russians dominated chess. Until today, the Russians still dominate chess. So the top players in the world, um, I mean, a lot of Russians are Jews also, but even the World Championship, the last few years, Magnus Carlsen beat um, Nepo, and Nepo, who lost the Ding, the Chinese man, was a Jewish Russian. But even today, like most of the top American players are former Russians. So chess and Russia go hand in hand. The Soviet school, Andrew Soltis, one of the famous authors, and a lot of I think like Levy, the Gotham Chess, he's a Russian speaker. Irina Krush, the women's championships, Russian. Even here in America, uh, like a lot of the top chess players come from Russia. Gadakamsky, and so understanding the Soviet chess school, Soviets were the first to actually have a Soviet chess school, and so good history books. So those are all this McFarland press, and my dad actually has like 40 books from the maybe 40, 50 books from the McFarland chess history of like names. So these were just the ones he had duplicates of. And so I don't know if I'll give these away. Like, some of these are more valuable. I might end up selling them. I might look at parts of them. I'm not sure yet. I'm not even sure like if anyone would read them. If if to give them away, um, they may be more only useful as reference to like a chess author, someone who's like writing chess books and wanted to know like chess history. Um, but these are really great books. The Scottish publishing company McFarland, um, chess history books. These also, my dad has almost the whole set of the move by move. So Cyrus Lakdalawa, who is a American international master, uh, chess coach to juniors, common author to book, and he's written a whole bunch of these move by move, where he goes through top grandmasters and explains the games move by move. So here's Casablanca, former world champion. I think he was um, Cuban, and I think he lost to Alekhine. But so these are good series of books. These are designed to be more beginner, like more explanation, not beginner like beginner, but like from 1500 to 2000 level. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at last Australia, you know the name of the German chess player. And you're saying they played in a tournament in Australia, and your grandfather was, or you're saying the mile champion. So you were saying the top German player came to Australia for a tournament, and your grandfather beat him. but you don't know the name. See, I look and find out the name of the German chess player. So Botvinnik, it had the Botvinnik, the McFarland book. So Botvinnik, Move by Move, also good books. These here, I actually read this book. I had owned this book and read this book. So David Bronstein was a top Russian player, never quite competed for the world championship, but was top 10 players in the world. And his book, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, of his best games, commentary, and this is a really great book, a well-known book of one of the most famous players instructing, entertaining book, Sorcerer's Apprentice, David Bronstein, also Jewish. Fabio Caruana, one of the top players in the world now, C Squared podcast, living in St. Louis. I think he's top 5 players in the world. Got his start with Susan Polgar in a synagogue in New York. Started playing chess in a synagogue in New York. Italian American player, and reached top level. And so I'm not sure the author, but your basic biography with some of the key games in the career of Caruana, going up to 2010. So obviously Caruana's he even played Magnus Carlsen for the world chess champion, and he was top 5 in the world. Almost he almost could have been the world championship this year, but so a little bit of his rise to fame and his top games up to 2010. And then here is actually the World Chess Championship between Carlsen and Caruana. So there's a lot of style of these type books. My dad has a lot of these books of, he even has like the majority of them of, just collections of the various world championships. So here is Carlsen Caruana 2010. So this book is up to 2010 when Caruana played Carlsen for the World Chess Championship and lost. And it was actually mostly draws. And then here's the World Chess Championship match between Carlsen and Caruana. So I gotta look. I may have taken this by accident. No, this, okay. So yeah, this is the Hungarian player, and this is a series. So my dad has the full set, but he just, for whatever reason, had a duplicate of this one. Mikhail Tal's best games, 1972 to 92. The Invincible. Tal had a long career, and he played, on the world championship level. I forget if Tal was world champion for a period of time, or he never became world champion, but one of the top Russian players. You would think he was also Jewish, and had a long career. So a lot of people played Tal, and he played, as like a smoker, a very exciting tactical player. So here is volume 3 of Tal's best games. My dad has volumes 1 through 3. He just had, for a reason, a duplicate of that one. Here, Boris Gelfand, My Most Memorial Game, the Russian-Israeli who left Russia to move to Israel and played in the World Championship match last decade against Vishwanathan Anand and lost. So Boris Gelfand, best games. I have a few books from Boris Gelfand. Also, positional player, and is the Russian-Israeli. So I was mentioning Searching for Bobby Fischer, Fred Waitskin, who wrote the book. Duvid played Josh Waitskin in Southfield when they had the National Elementary School Championship here when I was in third grade. And my brother actually beat Josh Waitskin in like a national junior high or high school. He was older than Waitskin. But Waitskin, who the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was made off, and his father, and the Dalton School. Duvid talk about the Dalton School. God forbid Jeffrey Epstein, math teacher, chess coach at the Dalton School. AKL, thanks for tuning in. And so the famous book Searching for Bobby Fischer, Fred Waitskin, and Josh Waitskin ended up quitting chess after high school, anyways, after graduating from Dalton. Here, Gary Kasparov, Unlimited Challenge, autobiography. So, was this autographed? Brother, I'm not sure if this is autographed or not. I have to look at this. Yeah, my dad had 2 copies, so if he had an autographed copy, I would have left that for my dad. So to look to see. So I'll pull this aside to give back to my dad. So this might even be autographed from Gary Kasparov. I was looking what year this was written in 1990. So this Gary Kasparov's autobiography written in 1990. And so I think it's actually autographed. So I'm going to give this one back to my dad and see if his other one may not be autographed, or maybe they both are autographed. Here, the Leningrad Master Tournament 1934, Max Yu and Kamak. So just a famous chess tournament in Leningrad 1934. Included top players, some of the games. So there's a lot of books like these that just cover games and commentaries from top players. Here's Lasker's Greatest Chess Games, 1889 to 1914. Considered one of the world champions. Older book by Reinfeld and Rubenfein. Two authors said Reinfeld with all the 1,001 books. So here I was mentioning, like the big series. My dad has like a whole series of these by the author of that like big book of tactics, Ludmil Svechnikov, and he has like on almost all the major top grandmasters, called for buffs. So here's Golko for buffs, Boris Golko, a Russian grandmaster, and just has basic games and explanations. Here's Casablanca for dummies, Olofsson for buffs, and Paulson for buffs. So these are mediocre books. Not sure why my dad bought them all. At least they have like 10 or so games with a little bit of explanation from top players. Here's the World Chess Championship 1929 between Alekhine and Bugalubov, which Alekhine won. Here's Frank Marshall, United States Chess Championship, a biography with 220 games, is also McFarland. Frank Marshall, from the founder of the Marshall Chess Club in Manhattan, who mentor to Bobby Fischer, U.S. champion for many years. Here's Arnold Danker, the Bobby Fischer that I knew. So Duvid played in the Arnold Danker Tournament for Champions one year, and he was one of the top American players, and so he wrote a book, The Bobby Fischer I Knew and Other Stories and Games. Here's another one, The Life and Games of Mikhail Tell. a little biography in games. Mikhail Tal, one of the most famous, attacking, very exciting games. Yeah, Arnie, I played competitive chess as a junior. I was even a state junior champion, competed over the nation on a national level, and then I stopped playing after high school. So now I just chess coach. So these books I plan on giving away, and they're more just intellectual interest and also like the science of expertise. But I do chess coach, so I'm a competitive chess coach as a volunteer activity. So here's the most instructive games of chess ever played, another famous Irvin Chernov book, 62 masterpieces of chess strategy. Famous games with the lessons to be learned. Here's Kasparov 3. Kasparov and Karpov played like Karpov was the world champion for like 10 years, and Kasparov was the world champion over 10 years. And most of the years, Kasparov played Karpov because Karpov was still the number 2. And so here's Kasparov number 3. And I'm not sure what year that would have been, like, the 1984 or something like that. Here's Kasparov 1990. Kasparov like from, I think Kasparov won like 1982. So after Fischer didn't defend his title, Karpov became champion and remained champion till like the early 80s, maybe like 1982 or something like that. And then he played Kasparov like 10 times. And so here's their match in 1990. This one's a biography, no chess games, just biography. Half a Century with Viktor Korchnoi, evildoer. Korchnoi defected from Russia, and he played Karpov and lost, but he famously defected from Russia. Oh, Ashley, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, God bless. God forbid. God forbid. The evildoer. So Korchnoi was an interesting character. They had like psychics, and the Karpov match, and like both teams brought in like psychics to try to like curse the other player, and a lot of interesting stories. But famous Russian defector, one of the top players, almost world champion but never quite made it. Yasser Seirawan was the second to Viktor Korchnoi. And here is New York Times Great Chess Victories and Defeat, Robert Byrne. Robert Byrne was the columnist for the New York Times for a long period of time. And so just a collection of great games from Robert Byrne's New York Times column. Okay, so moving right along. So yeah, I think this Kasparov book is autographed. So the 1990s, so Gary Kasparov's book, 1990, and okay, so next I'm going to do the strategy books. Sorry. So that, getting these ready. Okay. Sorry, just getting the next tranche ready. Okay, so yeah, I like chess in a relationship to world affairs. Chess is a good signal of world affairs. Although these days chess has become more game. So chess used to be like people saw my essay more about like world politics and clashes of nation, and more recently chess has become mostly gamers. So these are strategy books. So here is the Microsoft series. So Microsoft Press. Chess has always sought sponsors. Chess is very popular. Like 1 out of 5 people in the world play chess. A lot of, especially like more intellectual people, have a strong interest in chess. Although chess has almost always failed to pick up sponsorship, and so you'll have different corporations that for different periods of time you were more or less involved in chess, like Deep Blue, IBM, Google, Alpha Zero, Microsoft, and then they move on because so to say the chess world, competitive chess, is less interesting than just the game itself. But Microsoft had sponsored a series of books with Yasser Seirawan, now a famous commentator, like a Bug House, Crazy House player, and Jeremy Silman, international master, popular author. And these are basic introductory books: chess tactics, chess strategies, and play winning chess. So these books are kind of basic and introductory. I'll probably just give those away to younger, even high school, maybe middle school students at the Detroit City Chess Club. So this is one of the most popular chess books in the last few decades. So Jeremy Silman wrote a book, The Amateur's Mind, and he wrote this other book, How to Reassess Your Chess. And it had many editions. It's one of the most popular, best-selling. And then Jeremy Silman was even the author for the Teachings Company series on chess. And he's also an astrologer, Jewish man. So you have different parts, imbalances, minor pieces, and a lot of key things like space, material, key files, whole, weak square, initiative, king safety, minor pieces, active, uh, psychological meanderings, space, imbalances. So this was one of the best renowned chess books for a long period of time. And probably from like 1500 to like 2200 level. And conclusive covers a whole bunch of various aspects of the game strategy, written in a clear, comprehensive, easy to understand way. You see materials, targets, dynamics, development, structure, initiative, files, space, knights, bishops, static, squares. Okay. Walter Brown, creator of the Continental Chess Club, I think made the World Open. He used to go to the U.S. Opens. Duvid remembers Walter Brown, American Grandmaster, passed away a few years ago. His life and career in 100 Best Games, The Stress of Chess, and Its Infinite Finesse. So I should have put this with the Grandmaster, so I had that in the wrong section. Here's somewhat an opening book, but so we'll put with the opening. So here, Attacking Chess for the Club Player, Improve Your Skills to Overpower Your Opponent by Herman Grutin, a trainer, international master, and I didn't put this with tactics, but your basic ideas like cooperation between pieces, open lines, exploiting weaknesses, um, your various motifs in general to understand attacking play. David Bronstein and Sergei Vronikov's Secret Notes. So this is more biographical. So I put this with the other section there too. More biographical. So here's another interesting book. Willie Hendricks, The Origin of Good Moves, A Skeptic's Guide to Getting Better at Chess, a new in chess book by international master, and a more exercises and theoretical idea of how do you find good moves, what makes a move good, how do you find good moves. So this a good book also maybe for like 1500 to expert level player, master level. Important, I talked about Kotov and analysis trees and candidate moves, but how do you find good moves? What makes a move good? How do you find good moves? Okay, moving right along. Okay, so here, Arthur Van Odenwieding, Chess Pattern Recognition for Beginners, the Fundamental Guide to Spotting Key Moves in the Middle Game. And looking at pawns and pieces, different games. So important, conceptual book like The Art of Checkmate, an attempt to break down basic patterns, like you said, the last book, The Origin of Good Moves. But how to recognize good moves in regular positions. Dvorian Kolyasevic, Beyond Material, Ignore the Face Value of Your Pieces and Discover the Importance of Time, Space, in Psychology and Chess. Some people say Kasparov was the main first person, to the relative value of material to space and time in chess. Croatian grandmaster, and just conceptual, trying to understand how time, initiative, space could be more valuable than the basic material, like when you teach like the value pawn versus one, like the center pawn used for stockfish and computer evaluations, so like the queen versus nine, to saying that the value of the pieces is relative, and sometimes things like space and time, initiative, psychology could be more important than material. Also, something that's been seen recently with computer chess and the Alpha Zero. So here more Daniel Naroditsky, Mastering Positional Chess, Practical Lessons of a Junior World Champion, and somewhat basic concept: prophylaxis, defense in a worse position, building and breaking fortresses, positional sacrifice, paralysis in the middle game. So your basic ideas from his game, Daniel Naroditsky, one of the more popular streamers. today. He's based in Texas. Sorry, openings. So here's strategic chess exercises. Find the right plan to outplay your opponent by Bricard, an international grandmaster from France, and just exercises to train a person to find the right plan in the middle game. So it's one of the things I train often. A lot of basic players from the opening in the middle game. How do you formulate a plan? And a lot of players intuitively are like attacking players, and will try to mate the king or win material. But a lot of players have a hard time formulating a plan and usually just wait for their opponent to make a mistake. So it's one of, even beginning level like 1200, once they have the basics of the game, it be very difficult. How do you form a plan? So very important concept. Judith Polgar, Master Your Chess with Judith Polgar, inspirational lessons from the all-time best female chess player. This is a Chessable book, and this one's pretty basic. Chessable, nice color diagrams. Just look at the layout. So you got opening disaster, calculation, positional concept, strategy, positional sacrifices, tactics, the initiative, the attack, and the end game. So overall, many different aspects of the game, more focusing on her own games. So I had 2 copies of this, Strategic Chess Exercises. So here's the Science of Strategy, Alexander Kotov. So Kotov, the famous author of Think Like a Grandmaster, Play Like a Grandmaster, Train Like a Grandmaster. So here is the Science of Strategy. It's got the pawn attacking the center, play on both wings, defense and counterattack maneuvering. So Think Like a Grandmaster, I said, is one of the books that changed my life. It's a great book, more in terms like meditation and controlling one's own mind, optimizing intelligence. But it's a chess book. But this one's more straight chess. But Kotov was one of the heads of the Russian school decades ago. Although I think he was into the 80s for a period of time. So Kotov, great book, Science of Strategy. I actually never looked at this one. So Think Like a Grandmaster changed my life. I mentioned I read that already in elementary school, and I also looked at Train Like a Grandmaster, Play Like a Grandmaster. So this one, The Science of Strategy. The Complete Manual of Positional Chess from the Russian Chess School. And so from the opening, getting an advantage in development in the center and middle game, and it tries to be comprehensive of the various elements of positional play by Russian grandmasters. Here I've mentioned Boris Gelfand played in the World Chess Championship versus Vishwanath Anand, a Russian-Israeli. So he's got 2 books, Dynamic Decision Making in Chess. We've got things like Time, Dynamic Masterpieces, Defense, Compensation. So Gelfand was a very dynamic positional player, and he's got another book on positional decision making in chess. So this was the book of the year in 2015. The Squeeze, Space Advantage, Transformation of Pawn Structures, Transformation of Advantage. So Boris Gelfand, positional advice from one of the best positional players. Training with Mashka from Viktor Mashkelenko, Practical Chess Exercises, Tactics, Strategy, and Endgame. Ukrainian IM. And here the Shereshevsky method to improve chess from club player to master. Shereshevsky, 1950, was a leading Russian trainer. So from the Russian message, endgame strategy, basics of the Soviet chess school. The Power of Pawns, Chess Structure Fundamentals for Post Beginners. George Hickel is former German champion and chess trainer, and your basics, hanging pawns, isolated pawns, backward pawn, pass pawn, double pawns, weak square, and pawn chains. So important aspect on the pawns in chess. Here, Andy Soltis, What It Takes to Be a Grandmaster. From 2016. So Soltis still writing books up till recently, and more like the basic training and coverage to concepts you need to master to become a grandmaster. I mean, that's just the title, What It Takes to Become a Grandmaster, but it's a more comprehensive overview of strategical ideas. 300 Most Important Chess Positions, Study 5 a Week to Become a Better Chess Player by Thomas Enquist, who was a Swedish international master, and Minority Attack, Queenside, Kingside Attack, Knight Maneuver, Bishop Maneuver, Piece Development, Exchange. So just fundamental positions that exemplify basic strategies. 300 Most Important Chess Positions taken from historic famous chess games. So Jacob Agard, an international master from Denmark, is one of the better, well-respected chess authors, chess trainers these days. He's been on Perpetual Chess podcast multiple times. So here's his excelling at technical chess, learn to identify and exploit small advantages. Technical tools like weaknesses, domination, pass pawn, basic strategies for taking positional advantages and converting them into a win or stronger advantages. Here's excelling at combinational play. So in the same series of excelling at technical chess, and this is combination play and mostly exercises. So this book is mostly exercises. I'm not sure. This might be more tactics, but having this section. Here, Active Pieces by Jay Bonin. Jay Bonin is international master from New York, was one of the strongest players at the Jewish also at the Marshall Chess Club, and was a regular speed player. And so here, practical advice from America's most relentless tournament player. He played in like almost. He was you play some of the most tournament games every year. One of the biggest regulars at the Marshall Chess Club. So your basic ideas and strategy. It's your move, Chris Ward, and it's more positional training. Some of our tactics, but these are more like test, look at a position, and find the best positional continuation. Training for the tournament player, Dvoretsky and Yusupov. So I mentioned Dvoretsky and Yusupov, the most famous Russian chess trainers of the last few decades. And so this is how to train at chess, overview of the concept of how you really train and to improve at chess. But also has games. Mental toughness in chess, practical tips to strengthen your mindset at the board. And look at this. This is by Werner Schweitzer, a mental coach from Salzburg, Austria. And so he's not a major chess player. He's a mental coach. I'm going to set this book aside and look at it. So this looks a little interesting. These are like mental techniques, mental toughness, specifically designed for chess players, but there's no actual chess in this. I'm going to set this aside, look at this one. Here, chess test, Mark Dvoretsky, and there's more positional, so more from Dvoretsky, one of the more prolific chess authors. And then Aaron Nimzowitsch, former world chess champion, most famous for My System. And here's his book, Blockade. This was the first book that he wrote. And the concept of the blockade in chess, stopping your opponent from what your opponent wants to do. Okay, so I still got the opening books to go. Okay. So this is my biggest section here, is the opening books. So I saved this for last. And chess books in general, the most chess books are about the opening. And this is what scares people away from chess the most, is the opening preparation. And for people who want to like become better chess players, is like, oh no, like I can't study so much for the opening, so much memorization, and all the, because I mentioned most chess games. Most chess games already reach a unique position by move 5 or 6. Stronger players are more likely to get in, like play into known lines into like move 15 or 20. World Chess Championship, top level games might have preparation, through like move 20 or something like that. But most chess games already reach a unique position by like move 5 or 6. And, so opening strategy, opening theory is a huge part of the game. Memorizing opening strategy, thinking about the openings, and it's the biggest part of the chess library. And I mean, because there's so many different parts of openings, opening repertoires. I have a book on the opening names I'll get eventually. So, there's whole books on well-defined sections of the opening. So even like main, like the Queen's Gambit, the Sicilian, then there's sub books on just variations of it. And it's the biggest section of various parts of chess. So I'm kind of doing these by size. So here's the Queen's Gambit declined. This was the old chess informant style back years ago, where they had the chess encyclopedia and the openings were put into categories. So these are actually chess puzzles from the Queen's Gambit, and way to train yourself to find the right move in certain section. Okay, Jennifer, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, chess is a great game, but most people, like 1 out of 5 people in the world play chess. So majority of people just don't know chess. I mean, everyone basically has heard of chess, knows of chess, but like 1 out of 5 people play occasional chess, know how the game is played, and occasionally play chess. Tournament chess is becoming more popular, but like still like 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100 people wherever compete at chess, and like those who actually study chess is much smaller. To even people who know that there's such a thing is like chess books. There's books on chess, like there's hundreds. Like Duvid here has like well over 100 chess books. Said my dad is like 2,000 to 3,000 chess books, and so most people wouldn't even fathom. And then just the concept of like the opening. So like the King's Indian. So Duvid likes playing the King's Indian. So Petrosian was a King's Indian player, and so here is the King's Indian according to Petrosian. And I have a whole bunch of books on the King's Indian while I'm at it. So I'll do these first. So these were the old school. Now with the computer, I don't know if they make these anymore, but they used to have like these comprehensive ones of like opening variations and backward chess openings. There's the encyclopedia chess openings and different ones. And it would try to delineate the most common standard openings, and almost no explanation, all notation, and like these charts. And back before the computer in like the 80s 70s, like people would memorize these. So if you're a chess player, you memorize like like the chunking. I've talked about Herbert and Simon and the chunking experiment on chess, and they estimate that like master chess players have like 50 to 300,000 chunks of chess memorized, and a chunk of chess could have like multiple of these lines. So think like masters at chess have tens to hundreds of thousands of opening moves memorized. So instead, like Duvid doesn't compete at chess anymore, and like the level of the opening preparation to say you really do need to know tens, hundreds of thousands of opening moves memorized, and that's why we have memory techniques to understand it. So here, Sveshnikov, who has a opening in the Sicilian named after him, a chess opening repertoire for blitz and rapid, sharp, surprising, and forcing lines for black and white. Sveshnikov was a top player in the world. And so this is for quick play. So obviously in quick play, you could play different openings than in tournament play, like the Alekhines defense. So his collection of opening preparation for quick play. Here's another big one, Chess Openings, Theory and Practice by Hurwitz, a definitive study of the most important openings with 2,660 fully analyzed variations and 439 complete illustrative games. So this is something like a top master would probably know like the majority of these. Like, master level play, you could get to like a player playing basically one opening for white, one or two openings for white, one or two openings for black. By the time you reach master level, you really have to play multiple openings. At the grandmaster level, almost all the players play variety of openings. So, just to think 2,660 fully analyzed variations of major variations. So, these are just the 2,660 major chess opening variations. And this was from decades ago. So now a book would probably be like 5,000 major chess opening variations. And someone like Magnus Carlsen, top grandmasters, probably know close to all of them. So like 5,000 major chess opening variations. The top players know the majority of them. So my dad, these are all duplicates. Like my dad has more than just these ones. Almost all these books my dad has, and they're so I enjoy the King's Indian. King's Indian for black is where like you fianchetto. It's like it'd be like a reverse King's Gambit, but you fianchetto your bishop on G7 and then eventually push F5 and a lot of times close it and aim for a kingside attack, pawn storm. And so there's a lot of books on the King's Indian. So here is Catronius. Catronius is a 9-time Greek champion. And he wrote a 5-book series on the King's Indian. And so I just have books 1, 3, and 5, although my dad has the full collection. So here's Catronius' 5-book collection on the King's Indian. And here's Ilya Smerinin. Ilya Smerinin, an Israeli champion. So Ilya Smerinin, I think, is actually now head of FIDE and Russian-Israeli player. And here's his book, King's Indian Defense, and said changed it Warfare, because the King's Indian leads to a lot of times very dynamic and attacking play. And most of the time, it is black who ends up attacking the king with the pawn storm on the king side and the King's Indian, and white often has the play on the queen side. So the King's Indian is a good way for black to get an attack in chess. So very exciting. So here, Ilya Smerinin, the Israeli-Russian chess player who I believe is now head of FIDE. And semi-related, the Perk defense is like the King's Indian. However, in the Perk defense, usually the person doesn't play the F5. A lot of times the Perk defense transposes into the King's Indian. Okay, so there's a lot of basic. So here's the English defense. The English defense is usually when you open up with C4, pawn to C4, and I have a book on the opening names. I haven't got to the point why it's called the English defense, but white playing 1 C4 is the English defense. Here's the Sicilian Nijorf. These are good books. These are kind of beginning, so these ones I may try to give away at the. This also Emil Satovsky. I think he's also Russian-Israeli. And the Sicilian Nijorf. So the Nijorf is the Nijorf. It has this pawn structure where they exchange the D for the C pawn and the backward D pawn. So it's a very common position. Nijorf already being one of the great chess players from decades ago, the opening named after him. So very common opening and top level play. There's other version of the Sicilian that could be more aggressive. Here the Caro-Kann, where black plays c6 and then d5, playing c6 on move 1 to support the pawn push to d5. Very common opening, solid opening. The Tarish defense, I think the Tarish is like a Queen's Gambit with a fianchetto for white. So the Tarish defense is it's from the Queen's Gambit. So these are common openings. So like I'm not an opening expert, so I'm even slipping my mind what some of these are. Here's overall, keep it simple, e4, solid, straightforward chess opening repertoire for white. So you're saying not just one opening, but if you're an e4 player, to have a whole bunch of lines prepared for white with e4. Here's more Caro-Kann. We'll play e4, and so this playing, John Shaw has a whole bunch of books on the opening. I actually have his King's Gambit book. So this is just a comprehensive playing e4 for one, the openings you might play against, including the Caro-Kann and other minor lines from e5. Here's the Spanish exchange variation in the Royal Lupez. Very common opening. Here's the London system, one of the most common openings in top-level chess today, with d4, knight out, and then bishop f4. So there's also a London system and an e4 opening, but very common opening. Here's another one on the Najdorf, Sicilian Najdorf. The dragon, Sicilian dragon. Sicilian is e4, c5, where white, one of the, I think it's more common. So the most common first move for white is e4, and the most common reply from black is c5 as opposed to e5. And there's a lot of different variations within that. And so you have the Najdorf, here you have the dragon, here you have the Taimanov Sicilian. Yeah, Arnie, chess is too complicated to be solved. So the computer will never solve chess. Like it is like 10 to the 70th possibilities. And I said, by the fifth move, most chess games are in unique positions because there's like 20 possible moves each time. So already by the fifth move, you have like 20 to the 10th power. And so already by the fifth move, the majority of chess games are unique positions that have never been seen before. And it's been demonstrated that it's unlikely that computers will ever be able to solve chess like checkers. So checkers, they've been able to go through every unique position and possibility through computer simulation. They've tried to demonstrate mathematically that they'll never be possible for chess. So here, play 1b3, the Nimzo-Larsen attack. Nakamura does stuff like this. And here, e4, e5, classical repertoire. So the classical, old school, most common, e4, e5. Orfeo, no one talks to you. Well, I'm trying to get through these books. Okay, so these books are kind of opening strategy, not straight openings, but opening strategy. So here's Sidestepping Mainland Theory, cut down on opening study and get a middle game you are familiar with, by Welling and Giddens, and basic opening ideas, pawn structure concepts to try to just get through the opening and into the middle game with as little theory as possible. Because sometimes it's very difficult just to top players will, if you make a like a second, third best move, a series of second or third best moves, 3 or 4 of them in a row, God forbid, you might end up in a worse position and even a losing position. So just to get through the opening in an equal game in order to get into the middle game and, so to say, play some chess, past the theory is relatively difficult. So, there's certain strategies, sidestepping mainline theory, just getting to a playable position. Here, Vincent Moret, chess coach, my first chess opening repertoire for white, and you're just basic mainstream opening ideas that beginning players are likely to see. Yakov Neistat mentioned, a very aggressive Jewish-Russian chess player, winning the opening mistakes, and how to punish them, and just ideas for how to win quickly straight in the opening. Like I mentioned, like that last book, how to sidestep mainland theory, but how to catch a person off guard in the opening and just destroy them, have a winning position, even checkmate in the very early moves of the opening. And along the same line, Carsten Muller from the Endgame books, 222 opening traps after d4. And it's 222, like it says, various early positions in the opening where a person could go wrong and should cost them the game, make a mistake that will be bad enough to give the person a decisive advantage just in the first few moves. In a similar line, Nikolai Kalinchenko, winning in the chess opening, 700 ways to ambush your opponent. And opening by opening, like the King's Gambit. Duvid likes playing the King's Gambit because it's a good opening to beat the opponent right out of the opening, play for mate. So 700 examples of how to ambush, crush your opponent right out of the opening. And Yuri Razuvev, key concepts of gambit play. Famous Soviet coach. And so this is like the theory of gambit play. The ideas behind the gambits. Okay, so get in there. Almost through. So here, the Roy Lopez Italian structure, understand before moving. So a lot of explanations of the idea behind the opening. There's a whole series of these understand before moving books by Grutin. I had another book from him, I think Swiss player or Danish player. Here, Tim Sawyer has written like 50 chess books, and he's got a whole series of these like tactics in the opening, and they're mostly position books. And so here's the Royal Lopez, and just problems straight out of the opening, and tactics, chess opening combinations and checkmates, and just showing straight out of the opening how there could be checkmate or serious tactics. And my dad has almost the whole series. So Sawyer has like 50 books total, but like 20 different books. These like tactics in the opening. Here is a more generic old book, Rare First Moves, Chess Opening Games. another Tim Sawyer book. Here's a whole series of books. Karsten Hansen, Catastrophes and Tactics in the Chess Opening. So here's volume 6 in the Open Sicilian, and just how things can go wrong right out of the opening. Here's another one, Catastrophes and Tactics in the Chess Opening, Selected Brilliancies from volumes 1 through 9. Bill Wall has a whole series of books like this. Miniatures. So here's 600 Italian miniatures, and the Italian is the bishop e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and so just quick games like the the disasters or tactics, how one side could win very quickly in the opening. So Bill Wall has a whole series of these miniature books of quick games divided by opening. Here, I was mentioning John Nunn. John Nunn also has a whole ton of opening books. So here, the Martial Attack, which is a variation of the Royal Lupez. More, here's Gennady Nessus, correspondence world champion in Russia, and tactics in the opening. So here's tactics in the Grunfeld, and here's tactics in the Sicilian. Here's the Queen's Gambit Declined, basic openings. Here's an interesting book. I was in the middle of reading this, Chess Opening Names, the fascinating and entertaining history behind the first moves. So not by a serious competitive chess player, amateur chess player, actually technology entrepreneur, but he found very interesting the history of the chess opening names. So wrote a history of the various names that were given, grandmaster names and place names. The Vienna, so like the King's Gambit, except knight c3 before playing f4. The Perk Defense, so we had that earlier with the black fiend shadowing the bishop g7 and bishop g6 and bishop g7, and but not the queen's, not like the King's Indian where immediate f5, so it'd be more positional as opposed to the counterattack of the King's Indian. Here's the Schliemann. The Schliemann is where black plays a reverse King's Gambit to what would be the Royal Lupez. Here's the Royal Lupez exchange variation, whole series of these books. Another Bruce Pandolfini, chess openings, taps and zaps, traps and zaps. Here's Eric Schiller. I remember Eric Schiller when I was young. He also wrote a whole bunch of chess books. He was one of the early programmers for ChessBase. So Gambit opening repertoire for black. He was like a weak master. He wrote a whole bunch of chess books, and he was one of the founders of ChessBase. Back when computers were first getting good at chess. So Gambit opening repertoire for black. There's another one for white. There's another famous book, Dvoretsky and Yupasov, Opening Preparation, just the theory of how to prepare for opening play, study for openings. There's another Bill Wall, 500 Alekhine miniatures. The Knight-Off variation of the Sicilian defense. Here's the Chernev winning chess traps. I had this book Tactics, but this is chess traps in the opening. So there you have it. Duvid's chess book collection. So you get another tour of my library. these are new books that I just got in. So let me show real quick before I end the stream. Actually, you can check my eBay page. I'll share my eBay, but I've new books I started listing on my eBay. I have some vintage books, some sets, some Guy Mospot and like complete sets of interesting American history, and some vintage books that I put up for sale. I have the whole stack behind me of like nonfiction that most of them aren't worth enough to sell, but I have quite a few books that I plan on listing. People watch Week in Review of it at Elliot on a few times recently talking about book selling. So that concludes Duvid's tour of my library chess book. So you will see, maybe I'll be back, my dad's house, like math and physics books. So, or chess books. Maybe I'll do a tour of my father's library. That would be pretty cool. My father, huge library. I'm organizing my father's library. He may not be into it. Not sure. He was kind of like a boomer and skeptical of the internet, or but so if you're a chess player or affiliated with the Detroit City Chess Club, I plan on giving the majority of these books away, but not just like giveaway to giveaway. I want to give them away to people who are going to study, like that could find the books useful. Okay, Michael, thanks for being there. So me and Michael are gonna finish up chakras, the morning service. Tomorrow I have to do something in the afternoon, so I have it scheduled for next week Monday. But hopefully next week Monday, we and Michael will finish up the introduction to Jewish prayer, the morning service, and then hopefully we'll keep it going. If Michael wants, we'll keep it going with the blessing, grace after meals, Mariv. Maybe we'll do Kabbalah Shabbos, the Friday night Sabbath prayer. So we could definitely keep it going for like another month or two, just because there's a lot of Jewish prayers. And so we'll see how, Michael going along, and then maybe we'll even move into chanting the Torah. So we see how much progress Michael makes with his Hebrew, and then hopefully we'll continue with that, and then maybe even move into chanting and you're reading from the Torah and cantillation. So I say, like, if you're a chess player local in Metro Detroit and you want chess books, you want training or coaching, come down to the Detroit City Chess Club Fridays. I'm working together with a few of the schools like Bates Academy, Cass Tech, Martin Luther King, some of the other schools. So I have in mind some of the students, some of the books that might benefit them. Other books are more advanced. So if you're a chess player who likes books and wants to study them, maybe you want to stream about it. You want to like discuss some of the things that are interesting to Duvid about mental techniques and chess in general. So you could reach out and comment or come down to the Detroit City Chess Club. So tomorrow morning there's a conference in Novi, the Automotive and Wards Autotech Detroit in Novi tomorrow, and so I'll probably stream there and go collect some reading material and do a little stream, see the expo. And so it was today and tomorrow, and so check out tomorrow morning, maybe like 11 o'clock or so. I'll probably do an IRL stream from the Suburban Collection Place at the Autotech show. And then, Sunday we'll have another week in review. I'm not exactly sure what I've planned. I don't have anything planned yet. So maybe I'll try to jump into some chess studies, or maybe some physics, more physics stuff related to the multiple truth hypothesis. And then, hopefully next week we got Michael again for the introduction to Jewish prayer. And so this was just an impromptu tour of my library because my dad gave me a whole bunch of chess books. And I said, like, I plan through my chess coaching to give away the majority of these books. So I might, give them away a few at a time, a few each week at the Fridays at the Detroit City Chess Club, and see like where people are holding, what books are going to benefit what people. So God bless. Signing off, and hope to see you tomorrow morning live at the Detroit Auto Tech Conference, and then Sunday for Week in Review. So thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more chess streams. Specifically, I'm going to try to pivot back to the science of expertise, and so chess will be a common theme in the science of expertise. But I'll leave it at that, and you'll see to it more streams. I wrote that one essay I shared at the beginning, so I'll put that. I'll try to link my blog in duvid.com. So I'll try to link the article when I do the timestamps, and I'm going to try to write some more essays on chess. So God bless everyone. Have a great night.